Hi, my name is Shukri Toefy, and I'm an under 40 CEO.
The African Renaissance. The concept that the African people and nation shall overcome the current challenges confronting the continent and achieve cultural, scientific, and economic renewal is here, with young men and women taking the lead. Some call them the new school heroes. We call them under 40 CEOs.
Shukri Toefy was born in Cape Town, South Africa in 1984. He attended the University of Cape Town in 2003, where he later graduated with a degree in law and politics. While a student at the University of Cape Town, Shukri met Amr Singh. The two became friends, and after choosing to miss their graduation ceremony to take a job filming in Dublin, Ireland, went on to found Fort. Shukri has served on a number of boards, including the Cape Film Commission, Sizalo Investment Group, and Kinza.org, and has presented at numerous events locally and abroad on a range of topics including entrepreneurship, leadership, strategic brand communication, and shared knowledge. Shukri Toefy is an entrepreneur, film producer, and the Group Chief Executive Officer at the Fortified Group.
All right, welcome to Under 40 CEO, Shukri.
Thanks for having me.
All right, you've been described as an entrepreneur, a strategist, an opinion leader in not just business, but also brand communications. You attended University of Cape Town, where you got your degree in law and business. Would you say that this prepared you for the career path?
I think university teaches you how to think critically. It teaches you how to digest information and process it. I'd say that it's that sort of thinking and critical thinking skills that sort of allowed me to apply that in business. But I can't say that what I learned at university, any of the substantive matters I use in my day-to-day work today, no.
Okay, so the records say that you and Amr, the co-founder, were both penniless. And it also says you had mounting student loans at the time. And I think you were just about 22 when you launched Fort. How did you do it without money?
So, yes, I think penniless is a very romantic term in a sense. It's a very sad term in one sense, but in another term, we were your traditional cash-strapped broke students. So we needed to pay off our student loans in order to graduate and move and move to the next year. And we were finding many different ways to pay off our student loans. And we would jump on the train and get into a taxi and work on an old busted up laptop and present to people. And I always say that probably the best sales pitches I must have ever done in my life is when we pitched when we had no track record, no company, no credibility around those things. So we started and we had a few early wins, and that sort of allowed us to catapult and sort of start to build up the resources to be able to move forward from there.
Okay, now as the CEO of Fort, unlocking value is something you continuously harp on. Now, how does a young business leader go about unlocking value?
So, I think there are many ways to approach, a term like unlocking value. And I think the first one is I think you need to be able to unlock the most value out of your human and sort of capital resources that you have. And that's really important, to be able to show that value to your clients. But then I think you need to be agile enough to be able to pivot into different areas and allow not only your client to get more, but for you to be able to find other ways to monetize different things that you do.
Okay, now you currently launched the Fort Network at a grand event in Johannesburg. Congratulations. But I want to know, how huge is this network and what are your expansion plans for the future?
So yeah, we launched our global network, and we launched it with our first office in Kenya and based in Nairobi. And we wanted to sort of have the opportunity to work out how we work as a network first. And I think what's important, what drives us is this idea that you can be African and independent and world class. I think far too often we are being dictated to, and I think that we need to be able to stand up and drive our own narrative. And I think I'm very excited about it. I think, there'll be some bumps and bruises along the way. Building any sort of network, doing any sort of inter-country business is going to be tough. but I think we need to be bold to be able to do it. We need to be able to pick ourselves up when things are tough and be able to move forward.
Okay, so what would you say is the current business structure at the Fortified Group?
So Amr and I we run it very entrepreneurially. We have a business in Mauritius, we have a business in South Africa, and now we have a business partner in Kenya. And the hope is, I think, that each network will have its own set of circumstances and sort of set of rules as to how you do that.
I think in 10 years you've done fantastically well. What would you say are those critical lessons that you've learned, that you can share on running a business, keeping it profitable? What are those lessons?
So yeah, I think I always say that probably the greatest skill I have is the ability to sell and keep things profitable. It's a very multi-layered thing. The basics of business is to make sure that you're bringing in more than you're spending. In essence, I mean, that really is the basis of it. But at times you need to be brave and you need to make investments into things that are hard to justify to your bookkeeper or to your financial accountant. And you say, we're building a brand or we're adding value to a particular client. And so at times you need to trust your gut. You need to surround yourself with the right people. You are the 5 people that you hang out with. And so if you want to sort of identify who you are, you need to look at the 5 people that you spend most of your time with.
Amazing. So storytellers for a connected world. That's how you describe Fort. So how would you say travel and interacting with different cultures has enhanced your storytelling?
So we've done work in over 17 African countries. And we've also been a company that people go to when they want to tell stories on the African continent. And I think the more you travel, the less closed-minded you can be. The more open-minded you are, the more you understand other people's cultures, the different sort of nuances about the different parts of Africa and the rest of the world. And so I think it's important because you also draw on the best practices from everywhere else.
For the CEO of a firm that has experience doing business in over 17 African countries, I'm eager to find out how the South African business landscape differs from the other African countries and unlock the uniqueness of this market.
So what would you say makes the business landscape in South Africa unique?
So I think it's unique in the sense that its financial sort of structures are very, very mature. And so you chat to people from all over the world, and it's a financial system that people envy. And it's very sort of developed and very mature. And so you have sort of in certain areas of our economy, things are very very, very crowded out. There's a lot of people. It's unlike your traditional developing market that you would find in South America or in the rest of Africa. And yet you still have that opportunity. I think you still have that opportunity to be able to tap into what we call in South Africa like a mass market type of business, whether it's product driven or whether it's service driven. But there's that opportunity to live between the first economy and the second economy. And I think that obviously that comes with inherent problems because you can't live between these two divergent economies. Mm-hmm. And the Gini coefficient of South Africa, like i.e. the gap between the rich and the poor and the sort of the kind of divide, is the widest in the world. South Africa is a deeply unequal country. South Africa is not a poor country. It's a very wealthy, deeply unequal country. And I think that we need to find ways to support government, to support civil society, to support labor as business to make a more favorable environment for business and entrepreneurship in South Africa.
That's amazing. So let's come back to Fort now. You've received a lot of nominations, accolades, and awards. What do these nominations, accolades, and awards truly mean to you?
In short, not much, in a sense that they don't mean much, to your business on a day-to-day basis. But what it does do is, I think, give people within the business the comfort that you are doing the right things and you're being sort of awarded and rewarded and having accolades from all over the world. Mm-hmm. And then it does build a brand because, I think at times business doesn't make sense. People don't do business with necessarily the best person. Mm-hmm. Robert Kiyosaki says you don't have to be the best author. Mm-hmm. You have to be the best selling author. And so I think that it's important to remember that when we're going into business.
What are those key challenges that you've had to overcome to make the strides you've made so far?
Look, I think that as we spoke about being a penniless student, I think that over a 10-year period, some of the lack of capital up front catches up with you, because you tend to make money and you plow it back into your business, and you make money and you plow it back into your business. And yet, on the one hand, it makes you very prudent and very smart. And so, it's your money when you are raising capital to do an investment, to buy a piece of equipment, to start an office anywhere else. It's your money, so you know exactly what that is. But the structural inequalities of our economy in South Africa, and the fact that 80% of the JSE in South Africa is still white-owned, like that, the historical inertia, I would call it, of sort of white monopoly capital privilege still is pervasive through any sort of small business, and when you're coming from a sort of a previously disadvantaged background, is that you don't have that ability to draw on capital to be able to, catapult you forward. And so I think that in the early days, it's great, it's love and fresh air, and you keep going, but then you start to grow up and you say, well, what is my vision for where I'm going? So I think that a lot of those problems that we face have come from that, from the fact that you're shooting from the hip, you're running on love and fresh air and fumes almost to move forward. And at some point you need to step up and say, I've been doing this for 10 years. Let's think about what we do well, what we don't do well, who we want to be, who we don't want to be. And I think those are important discussions for entrepreneurs to have.
Amazing. So speaking with CEOs in West Africa, from Accra to Lagos, they tell me human resources is a key challenge for them. Is it a challenge here?
In the creative economy within South Africa, we are spoiled for choice with respect to universities and training institutions that drive people into our creative economy. However, do those people have the requisite skills to be able to come in and immediately add value? I meet young people who come through our internship and training program that have this heightened sense of who they are, this heightened sense of the ability to come in and just, produce amazing things right from the get-go. And I think that that's as much of a generational issue and a Gen Y, Gen X, sort of the fact that everyone has the power in their own hands to be the master of their own destiny. So that's a challenge just generally when you're talking about human resources in any business, and particularly in a sort of a creative business. So yes, our strength lies in our people. And if you don't manage them properly, if you don't have a very successful people wellness and people management program, you're going to struggle. And so we are, regulated by the basics of, labor laws and things like that in South Africa. But what really regulates us is what's effective and what keeps people happy. And I think as entrepreneurs, you need to realize that's 2/3 of anything you can possibly do, is to keep, good stuff in your company.
Okay, so how would you advise a startup to hire?
So, I think that, what's interesting about hiring for a startup, I think I would say hire some of the misfits at times, Muhammad Yunus, in a book called Banker to the Poor, he described people who went off and got jobs and medical aid and pension funds and great perks and things like that. He described them as being soaked in warm water, where they became soft. They became soft to being able to go out there and do anything brave and anything really good. And so what you'll find as a startup is that you could never compete with someone who can offer those sort of benefits. But what you can compete is to say that you want to go out there and say, before you get soaked and too comfortable and have a bond and 2.5 kids, but actually go out there and do something amazing. I think, Fab, you said to me once that do something entrepreneurial while your kids are young, because they won't remember being poor, and it's something that sticks with me, quite a lot going forward. And so I think as a startup business, you need to think about finding those multi-skilled people, those people who are looking for a particular challenge that haven't fit into the traditional employment structures in the past, and ask them to think small. There's this big drive in Silicon Valley to think small, and I think in South Africa we need to think small, and we need to admire people who come and work for small companies, because there's something very noble about that.
Beautiful. So how would you describe your leadership style?
My key word when it comes to leadership is empathy. Like, that is really the word that I try to draw on when I'm thinking about my leadership, is that in order for you to lead people, you need to have an understanding of what they can possibly be thinking, what they could possibly be drawing on, because I think far too many people lead in their own image, and they have a lack of understanding of what anybody else can be going through. So, for example, I think the fact that we started off taking the train and the taxi to work makes me a much more empathetic leader. So when someone comes to me and says, "Look, I was stuck at the taxi rank," yeah, I know. I was there 10 years ago. I know. It's not like I'm not sympathizing with you. I'm empathizing with you to know exactly how that feels. I know what it's like to not be able to wear what you want to wear. I know what it's like to not drive the car you want to drive. And so when you bring that sort of appreciation to your leadership style, it's really helpful. And the other thing is, and it talks to your point around the human resources, is that when I look at the people in our organization, I say, they could be anywhere in the world. They wake up in the morning, they get dressed, and they come and work at Fort. And I respect that. I respect them for coming to work with us. And I think that having that respect goes a long way. I think far too many people have this elitist culture around the fact that I'm the business owner and you work for me. It's a short-term strategy. It may work for a while, but like your salary and what you pay people and how you coerce them into doing things will last for a very short time.
Okay. So what values are important to you and your firm? I've deduced a few, but what are the others?
So as I said, empathy is important for ourselves, for our clients. Integrity, and that talks to Fort with what we stand for, is just like we want to have the integrity to protect our people, to protect our clients, to protect the, nurture and value the good work that we do within our organizations. And then excellence. And we speak quite often about there being no relativity to excellence. You can't be excellent with your client and then not excellent when you speak to someone in the hallway, or write a horrible email but write a great business proposal, or do a really good big campaign but do an average small campaign. There can be no relativity to our excellence. And I think that's really what drives us, because we know that in this world where it is just such a competitive market.
Okay. So what would you say has been the biggest letdown you've had in your career so far?
We've had a few. There hasn't been one massive letdown. I think we've worked really hard on a bunch of business proposals that have been very close to coming through. We've had opportunities to grow and scale, and they've kind of fallen by the wayside, and things haven't worked out in the past. We've also invested in things that just didn't make money, and then we found ourselves in financial difficulties because we had invested in something that just wasn't going to work out. So you've got to pick yourself up and move forward from there. But I think that it's, as I said, to go back to that thinking, you've got to allow yourself to fail a little bit every day. I'm the type of person that writes a journal and writes things down. And I think that sometimes when you write it down, you see your failures writ large in your own handwriting. And it's important to digest that and to be able to say, well, I made a mistake. And what are the lessons that I can learn from that? So, as I say, I think there's small mistakes every day that I think that I make, and I try to learn from as we go along.
We understand Shukri's leadership style. We know the values that make his firm tick and his perspective on doing business across Africa. We know he works incredibly hard, and yes, he is a husband and father. However, I'm desperate to know how he finds balance in his life and what he does with his downtime. Okay, so onto lighter stuff. I have a few quick fire questions for you. What do you like to eat?
Do I like to eat? I like steak. I like lamb, particularly. I like my wife's lamb a lot, and that's what I like to eat.
Okay,
Yeah.
how would you describe your style, your fashion style?
I'm quite particular about what I wear, because I feel like there's consistency in how people see you and perceive you. So I think about the practicalities of that quite a lot as well.
Okay, beautiful. What other CEOs do you currently look up to?
There are a number of CEOs, like Warren Buffett. Something that for me is really important as an entrepreneur and as an investor is that he says that you need to invest in a company that an idiot could run, because one day an idiot will probably run it. And I think that we need to think about these things when we go about our business. And so for me, Warren Buffett is a really sort of smart guy that I try to draw on. Steve Jobs, there was a lot to draw from him when he was around, and I think that those lessons we'll still sort of understand as we go through. Richard Branson, your traditional sort of types of people that I think have all taught me lessons in different ways. And then closer to home, I think that even some of my peers within the creative economy, I really respect what they've done. I really respect what they do on a day-to-day basis. So I'll tell that to their face,
What's your favorite brand to wear?
I like Adidas as a sort of like the sort of shoe brand type of thing. So I think I really like the way that besides the fact that I think it fits like my brand, but I like how they've managed to maintain Adidas and then bring in Adidas Originals, and now more recently bring in Adidas EQT as well, which is like equipment, and so just really, really interesting. Yeah.
Okay, your favorite car to drive?
I drive an Audi, and I'm an Audi man.
Okay, what's your favorite travel destination?
New York. I think that New York is just such a sensory overload. It's a place that is just so inspiring. It's so different to other places that I go to. And then the south of France is another favorite of mine. I go every year for the advertising festival, and it's just sun shining and there's beautiful people, men and women, great food, and so it's just I think an amazing place as well.
Your favorite book of all time?
My favorite book of all time, sure. As a South African, I'm going to say The Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what book are you reading right now?
I'm reading a book, Gladwell, called David and Goliath.
Okay, beautiful. So lastly, I'd like to know, Shukri, what makes you happy?
It's a question I ask myself quite a lot. I think about when am I truly happy? And I think that I'm happy when the key parts of my life are in sync and in unison. So in work, there's this virtuous cycle where we're doing good work, my people are happy, we're making money, and our clients are happy. And then when I'm at home, I'm able to spend time with my kids, and I think that that's when I'm happiest, with my wife and my kids, and I feel comfortable. And again, I find appreciation in the fact that we live in a safe environment, and we can eat the food we want to eat, that my kids can play in the garden, because there are many places in the world where people can't, just because of politically they can't, because because of what's happening, but also because financially they're not allowed to they're not able to do that. So I find great joy in spending time with my family.
All right, thank you for coming on Under 40 CEOs, Shukri.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. Hello, my name is Shukri Toefy, and you can be an Under 40 CEO too.